do the title again. So challenges and solutions for developing a digital platform and web application, a startup case study. So Ego Creative Innovation is a session organizer. It's also Uber Docs and come to join our session. So I would like to pass to Andrew for the last session of today's Thursday gathering. Andrew, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everyone for joining today. We know it's 8 p.m. in Tokyo, so thank you for the patience to hang out for our session here. Before we get into the details of this, can we do a poll? We have two questions we'd like to ask you to know who we are talking to on your side. So if you don't mind doing that, Lisa, are you able to help bring up that poll? Okay, yeah, if you can answer these two questions, we will show you the results of this. While you are looking at this, let me just say, so obviously we are aware that Venture Cafe is a community full of tech-savvy people, a lot of startups, a lot of small private companies scaling up their technology, but not everyone has the experience of understanding the full scope of a large-scale web application, what goes into the development. So the purpose of this session is to introduce some of the key challenges and intricacies involved in a web-based platform, using the story of the development of an application for a disruptor in healthcare, UberDoc. So we hope that you would gain some insights from this and have some, solid takeaways. So before getting into the meat of the presentation, let me just introduce the panel here. Firstly, representing the UberDoc team, we have Brianna Sochi, co-founder, chief product officer based in Boston, Massachusetts. She is a graduate of the School of Management at Binghamton University. She joined UberDoc from the agency world and was previously media buyer and digital advertising strategist. At UberDoc, Brianna is responsible for day-to-day operations, technology development, and user engagement. Let's see, to the left of her, we have Steve Codd on the UberDoc team. He is a native New Englander. If you don't know what that means, it's the Northeast US, Boston area, New Hampshire area. He has a degree in computer information systems and over 20 years in software development. He was the Scrum Master on the MVP and early iterations of the UberDoc development project, and eventually took over the project as a product owner. After leaving a separate software development group, he joined UberDoc team as Scrum Master Tech Lead on the continuing development of the application and has stayed on as an ad hoc consultant. Now for the Ego Creative Innovations team, let's introduce Kate Menina, based in Kiev, Chief Operations Officer. She is also the head of the Ukraine division. She got her master's degree in international economics. And Kate's role at Ego is to perform operations management, define and implement processes, and she led the delivery of the UberDoc project on the Ego side. Next to her, on the left, we have Steve Majeski, business development executive. He has extensive background in marketing and advertising and has served as an art director, account executive, and creative director at both large and small advertising and marketing agencies over the last 25 years. He is a digital marketing consultant in the real estate industry and is co-founder of a boutique marketing agency. He is based in Miami, Florida, the opposite side of where I am. So finally, myself, Andrew Schwinger, business development representative based in Phoenix, Arizona in the Southwest. I was recently in Japan. I just came back 2 months ago. My background is securities trading and investment management and banking. I have 13 years overseas in Japan, Hong Kong, and mainland China. I'm a chartered financial analyst and a longtime member of the CFA Institute. In recent years, I started focusing more on alternative investments, especially in the energy sector, renewable energy, and real estate. I also have strong interest in smart and green homes and buildings. We're really happy to have this opportunity to speak with you today. This is our first appearance on a Venture Cafe session. It's also the record for our earliest webinar. It's 6 a.m. on the East Coast, Boston and Miami, and it's 4 a.m. where I am. So I didn't sleep much, so bear with me on this. Before we get further into the actual, UberDoc product, let me just give a concise overview of the two companies. So Ego Creative Innovations, the company started in 2008. They provide digital business consultancy and software development services with a full-fledged tech stack for native and hybrid mobile and web apps. They have particularly strong expertise in health tech, fintech, and in the automotive industry. And they help clients with the full 360-degree service, from concept screens, clickable prototypes, and business analysis to fully outsourced project management and the development of large-scale applications. And now UberDoc is a healthcare platform that connects patients to doctors for priority in-person and telemedicine appointments for a transparent price. They have created a marketplace where doctors have the tools to build their digital office and patients have the convenient access to specialty care. So as for the format tonight, tonight for you, morning for us, we will first talk about UberDoc, and this will be followed by a Q&A session. But feel free to type your questions in the chat. I'm going to put our contact details in the chat also. So you have that. You can always reach out to us directly. So I'm going to do that right now. And I will pass it to Brianna to talk about how UberDoc started and how they got involved with Ego Creative Innovations.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I'm just going to wait for the PowerPoint to hop up on my side. If you'll go to the next slide. And then the next slide. Awesome. So thank you, Andrew, for the introductions, and thank you, Venture Cafe Tokyo, for allowing UberDoc and Ego to speak with your group about technology development and how it pertains to startups. As Andrew said, my name is Brianna, and I'm the co-founder and chief product officer at UberDoc. UberDoc was founded in 2016 by Dr. Paula Muto. Dr. Muto is a general and vascular surgeon who has been in solo private practice for over 25 years. Before we hop into the case study, I figured it would be best to give you a little background on UberDoc and how we're disrupting the healthcare industry. So healthcare is just too complicated. For patients, it is inconvenient and expensive. Patients are paying out of pocket more than ever, even though they have insurance. And in the US, it takes on average about 3 weeks just to see a doctor. And physicians are dealing with the same problems. It is taking practices longer than ever to collect their payment, and physicians spend on average about 6 hours per day on tasks that are outside direct patient care. So that includes like documentation and paperwork. Furthermore, COVID-19 has literally changed everything, and patients are looking for new ways to access care, and physicians are readier than ever to expand their digital healthcare tools. Next slide. So we thought of a simple solution: create a platform with the only two stakeholders that matter, the doctor and the patient. A place where physicians can offer priority appointments for patients who just want to skip those insurance hassles and instead pay cash for that appointment. We are able to access all of our goods and services with the click of a button, from our dinner to our transportation to a place to stay for the weekend. It is easier than ever to make those transactions happen. So our vision is to make it just as easy to book a doctor's appointment. Next slide. And with the help of our development team over at Ego, we created a booking and scheduling platform that lists physicians by proximity and availability, and guarantees patients a single transparent price for that appointment. I'm now going to pass it off to my colleague, Steve, to dive more into the development process. Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
I was ready for that too. Steve Codd, various roles in this project. Currently the tech lead. I worked for the company who did the original development of the app. We took on the project from UberDoc. One of the first challenges we looked at was choosing a development partner. A major consideration of this in outsourcing was recognizing the challenges of time zone differences. We're located on the East Coast of the US, so we looked towards Europe at the 6-hour time difference so that we could stretch out our productive day, like having a second shift, but still maintain a meaningful overlap so the teams could meet, discuss the development with our partners. Communication was also very important. As English is our primary language, it was important to have a partner who was fluent in English to allow discussion of key concepts and the logic, and minimizing the learning curve and getting everyone up to speed for development. Our company, we held to a very strict Agile Scrum standard. We had a tool set we were very comfortable with, and it was important that our potential partners had the same level of skill and professionalism. And we found Ego was the perfect development partner, perfect fit. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges working with UberDoc, they had a lot they wanted to do. We worked with Paul and Brianna to break down the needs into user stories in a list of must-have, like-to-have, and someday maybes, and developed a MVP or minimum viable product to get that out and usable as quickly as possible. As a startup, budget was a discussion topic from the very beginning. Naturally, the team wanted to just get in and start building, but the restrictions limited scope. The beauty of our Agile process was that the functionality was added in increments. So every 2 weeks, we could present what we had completed to UberDoc and discuss which items in the backlog were the current priority. This allowed UberDoc the ability to adjust their priority every 2 weeks and the team the flexibility to pivot. There was a period where UberDoc had to shut down the product as an ongoing item, and we entered a maintenance mode. We approached the increments in the same fashion, but with a reduced scope, and it allowed us to keep moving forward, but at a slower pace, more affordable pace. But timing and budget was still hampering our process. And when UberDoc was ready to ramp back up to full speed, our company was not in a position to take on the project. So we turned to Ego as a product lead. The transition had some challenges, but since we were all familiar with the same app, the same technology, it was the right choice and it all went pretty smoothly. The next slide, please. A couple of other really important challenges were being in the medical industry. We had to deal with HIPAA, which is similar to APPI standards in Japan. We needed to guarantee security and privacy of the health information of the users. We had to guarantee data storage was secure. We had to guarantee that the data was protected not only in storage, but in transfer. We also had to deal with payment security and protection of cardholder data. For the more technical pieces and some of the development side, I can pass this off to Kate. Ready? Next slide, I guess.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the introductions and thanks for having us today. My name is Kate, and currently, as Andrew mentioned, I'm running the operations at Ego Creative Innovations, and I have been leading the delivery of the product from Ego side, working with closely with the UberDoc team for the last couple of years. And at Ego, I just want to provide a couple more information about what we do. We are delivering the digital products for about 12 years now. And currently, we focus on consultancy. We mainly start projects with prototyping phases, with business product analysis, performing further the full cycle of development, covering the activities that are usually required, such as creation of the user experience and flows, covering the development of the applications, mobile or web, and we also provide some kind of recruitment assistant if that's required. So we extend the existing teams of clients with the talent that is needed. So that's also one of the things we do for our clients. We work with the clients worldwide. We don't have any boundaries for that. So we work now with clients in Asia, in Europe, in the United States, and mostly operate in health tech, ed tech, automotive, fintechs, business verticals. So have a focus on that. Next slide, please. Yeah, for the MVP development, minimum viable product, as Steve have mentioned, we had to follow very strict timelines for the first version release to get to market faster, to get the users' feedback, and the optimal timing is considered to be 4 to 6 months. So we should be very careful with the requirements and with the features we select as the must-haves. So we create the optimal initial version that provides user with the core prioritized functionality, and based on the feedback we get, we iterated the product and updated it and provided further enhancements and some minor changes and improvements. So that timing in this whole process was very important. That's why the prioritization was done with UberTalk team, and we provided some of the solutions in some of the approaches to simplify where it was applicable, and to use the time we have the most optimal way. Next slide, please. Yeah, also, as it was mentioned before, we were using Scrum methodology and Agile process. Sorry, the slides are missing. Oh, yeah, here we have it. Please give us the previous one. Yeah, here we go. Thanks. So a bit more background on the process from our end. So the team was provided as a dedicated development team focused on this product development, and we had the roles such as product owner, Scrum Master, developers who were covering the full stack development, both front and back end. We had some ad hoc support from our team, from designer, from DevOps person, and quality assurance engineer was also assigned. Working in a Scrum environment, we had the 2-week sprints, and having the backlog of user stories that were provided by the UberDoc team, we were planning the sprints. We knew what amount of work, what amount of user stories can we take and can we deliver during this sprint. So it provided us with the predictability, and every 2 weeks we delivered some functional pieces, the new ones, or the functionality that was iterated previously. So that's helped to control the flow, control the timelines. So we were using tools such as Jira to have this interactive board where everyone could see what's currently in progress, what's upcoming, what was done. We used some tools, joint tools and joint spaces such as Confluence for documentation storing. And we had followed Scrum meetings And the one that is rather important is the retrospective meeting after each sprint we delivered. So we gathered together with the UberDog team and we discussed what was done well, what was not so well, what should we improve, what should we proceed doing, what should we stop doing. So the team gets improved and gets better result after each sprint we deliver. So this was the target. We also tracked the time using the tracking tools per task and per role, and provided the update reports that were set on a weekly, monthly basis that helped us to control these timelines and budget we spent. Also to understand whether we are fitting in the initial estimated time that we set for the MVP development. And I think that Scrum process was a very good fit here because team was able mm, to get the feedback to prioritize uh, prioritize the tasks and deliver exactly what was crucially needed. So and also it helped to manage the timing and to deliver the product on time. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some challenges regarding the product launch and what we faced after the launch. So about tight timelines, we have been talking before that the timing was very limited. So the prioritization was the key task for the teams to perform and to deliver the key functionality only that can be extended further based on the feedback we received. And after the launch, we kept the team with the minimum required amount of hours reserved to this project to perform the minor enhancements, some edits based on the feedback we received, but we were definitely not needed to provide the extended hours. That's why we decided that the optimal will be here to have this minimum reserved hours, so the team is always available to work on the feedback we get. I think that's pretty much it from my end now. So Brianna, I think right now I'll pass the word to you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. And I also want to add that we released our platform above schedule and below budget. So super. It was awesome to have Ego as a partner. So I wanted to discuss the UberDoc application post MVP launch and the digital healthcare trends that have influenced our continuous development. So when we originally launched UberDoc, we only were scheduling in-office consults. So for instance, patients made an appointment on the app and then, they went into the doctor's office for this appointment. COVID-19 has caused a massive acceleration in the use of telehealth for obvious reasons. Consumer adoption has skyrocketed from 11% of US consumers using telehealth in 2019 to 46% of consumers now using telehealth to replace their canceled healthcare visits. Providers have rapidly scaled offerings and are seeing 50 to 175 times the number of patients via telehealth than they did before. So even once a vaccine is distributed and patients are more comfortable venturing back into their doctor's offices, the majority of telehealth visits will not be those one-off consults for quick access to care, such as, a stuffy nose or an ear infection. But instead, telemedicine is going to be used as a new delivery method for physicians to access their already existing patients. So think of, those post-operative checks rather than, driving, 15 minutes and paying for parking to go in to see the doctor for 5 minutes. You can do it via telehealth. So we knew telemedicine wasn't just a fad or phase, and that instead it was here to stay. So as we saw the spread of COVID and the effects it was having on the economy, we knew we needed to add telemedicine capabilities and features to our platform as fast as possible to kind of get on that trend fast. So rather than developing our own telemedicine software, right, we can start from ground zero and develop one. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, right? There are a lot of companies out there kind of already doing it and doing it well. So we partnered with a company based out of Silicon Valley in California to develop a white label solution for us. They're called VC, and they are a video conferencing software behind companies such as American Well, Teladoc, and they even actually provide the video conferencing software for the NASA space station. So not only was VC able to provide us with industry-leading telemedicine, so for instance, with their development team, we were able to just, kind of develop a single sign-on and some API integrations that, the patient can book and schedule on the UberDoc app, but then the physician and patient can actually access that video conferencing via the VC, and it looks like UberDoc, right? But they, so we chose them because of their video conferencing capabilities, but they also had a lot of integrations for RPMs or remote patient monitoring. So that's another huge trend right now in the digital healthcare space. So remote patient monitoring is when a clinician collects data on a patient through the use of wireless tools. So for example, the iHealth app on your smartphone or those blood pressure monitors, or even your Fitbit, right? So these devices, monitor, your blood pressure and things like that, they can connect to the doctor and they can read them, when you guys aren't in the same office together. When asked in 2019, well before the pandemic, more than half of consumers indicated that they would use a connected health device if it was recommended by a physician. So you'll see this actually a lot in the employer space now. So, if you work for a big corporation, a lot of the added healthcare benefits are, apps or wearable devices that they will give their employees to help encourage, a healthy lifestyle. So both telemedicine and RPMs are huge healthcare trends that have exploded since the launch of our MVP. Because we architected our platform to easily integrate with other technologies, we are situated in a perfect place to form relationships with strategic partners such as VC, who offer products and features that we want to offer our physicians and patients without actually having to take on the development cost ourselves. If you go to the next slide for me. So where we are today, we figured we'd wrap up this presentation by letting you know what we've grown to in UberDoc. So UberDoc currently has over 5,000 physicians in our network, and we are on track to reach 10,000 by the end of the year. We spent the past 2 years perfecting our doctor onboarding strategy. And in Q4, we now are focusing on patient appointments. We are on track to serve over 1,000 appointments by the end of the year. And to close us out, we actually just completed a $1.5 million seed round and are opening up a Series A in 2021. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brianna. So we have a little bit more extra time than we planned for Q&A. So we don't see any questions typed in yet. If anyone has a question, we'd love to start our dialogue. Make this more casual, interactive. Whatever question you have, feel free to jump in anytime. We also have the ability to unmute you and let you ask verbally.
So, Brianna, I have a question to get us started. How did you settle on the Scrum methodology, as opposed to some of the other methodologies, waterfall or Agile to subset of Agile? But how did you guys come to was it from the original way that you were working, or did you migrate to that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to end up passing it off to Steve, but to start this, so when Paul and I, came up with this concept, 4 years ago now, both Paul and I did not have a technical background. Now, I came from digital advertising. Paul is a surgeon, so neither of us had any idea, what goes into building an application, how much it would cost, what any of the methodologies would be. And that's why we actually went to Steve's company. And that's why we originally had that middleman between, UberDoc and Ego, is because we, were completely ignorant to how technology development worked. So we needed kind of a champion on our side. So I'm going to pass it off to Steve to talk specifically why we chose Scrum.
Yeah, it was the way we worked, and the UberDoc had so much they wanted to do that we, as I said, we worked with them to come up with what would be the MVP product, and we could get it out as quickly as possible, because fast to market was very important, being disruptive and all. And Paul and Brianna were very patient and very understanding, and eventually became pretty good advocates of the process because they saw the benefit of getting things out, finished, and complete every 2 weeks. And once we got the initial product out the door, we kept adding features. And again, speed was very important.
Yeah, Steve has been an incredible mentor for me. So I have learned all my things from him. And it's funny because now I'll start taking the agile method into all points of my life. So I'm always thinking how can I prioritize these things? So, it's not just in tech at work, but it works everywhere.
We ran our entire company that way, every department.
Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
Steve, another question. How did you try to minimize or avoid scope creep? Very common in any kind of software development, but especially Scrum, right?
We were pretty militant about it. To protect our developers, and Kate's smiling, once the sprint started, as Scrum Master, I wouldn't let anybody talk to the team. I wouldn't let any changes come in. And that was one of the things that UberDoc understood quickly was 2 weeks is enough time to wait to change. Let us finish what we've committed to. And we left the 2-week commitments up to the team. They would decide what they thought they could take on. And then we would let UberDoc know what we would finish. And then 2 weeks, redirect everything. But just very strict to standard.
Steve or Brianna, I might have missed this point. How did you set up your communications? Did you have daily meetings, weekly meetings, meetings as needed? How often did you communicate, and how did you organize that?
We spoke with Ego daily. UberDoc, we had a sprint review every 2 weeks. We'd go and meet on location and demonstrate what we had done, but the channels were always open. I have lots of texts on my phone from Brianna.
Even in the middle of the night.
And we talked with Ego all the time. We were up early. They stayed very late. I would often have to tell the Ego people to go to bed, go home, get off the phone. Yeah, we're smiling, Kate. Good team.
And Steve, for those of us that are not maybe familiar with the Scrum methodology and the process, without giving a whole overview of the process versus other methodologies for software development, let's take one thing that you mentioned and kind of we went over really quickly. Can you talk about user stories and how that's sort of unique to Scrum and how that's used to develop the features?
Yep. In old school and waterfall, there was a lot of heavy requirements written up first. And I've worked with that. It's fine in some situations, but when speed's important, the user story method is you discuss with the product owners, the stakeholders, what it is they're trying to accomplish and put it into a, as this role, I want this feature so that I can do this story, and then work out some of the more detailed requirements of what might need to be met, like HIPAA or the credit cards or data security, and then throw that to the development team and let the smart people decide how to build it. So the user story tells them what we need to be built, and the developers tell us how they're going to do it. And it saves a lot of time and it really makes some bulletproof software. And Kate could talk to that as well.
Yeah, thanks. So the initial requirements are provided by the product owners team, and then the team collaborates, have these meetings where we have the backlog grooming session, and we see the priorities in terms of tasks that are in our backlog, and then we discuss each feature separately, and we can play planning poker, where each team member provides the evaluation of the task difficulty, and we decide how many so-called points do we have for each task, and then we see the evaluation added by the stories. So then we can decide further which ones are heavier, which ones are lighter, and when working in this environment for a long time, the team can feel and know and evaluate based on the previous experience how many points can we finish during the sprint. And then when we get to the division of the users of the story into the tasks, we are also adding the task for each member of the team, such as development itself, right? For example, writing tests and tasks for management. So those tasks are pretty standard, and those are usually estimated by each team member who has the proficiency in this field. And then we, by dividing this step by step, we can see the real effort, the real work effort that it will be, that this task will be having. So that was what was very helpful for us, that we used, all of us used this joint process. We used the joint environment such as Jira to monitor this and to go through this. So we even had some discussion threads in the tasks we had, and subtasks and stories, where we discussed this with Brianna and Steve in case we had any questions. So this feedback and this communication was daily, even several times per day, and we and everyone was aware of what's currently in progress, what's coming next, what I don't know, what issues we have faced, what should be put on pause, so something like that. It provides the clear and transparent flow for all participants of the process.
If I could expand on something Kate mentioned, is story points. And that's really what bridges the gap between development and the stakeholders, is the team estimates the amount of difficulty in a story, not how long they think it'll take, but how hard it is in relation to other stories. And over a period of weeks or sprints, they develop a velocity of how many story points they can do every 2 weeks. And then we could communicate that to the stakeholders and say, you have 20 story points. And then Brianna and Paula could look at the backlog and say, in those points, we'd like to do these stories next. And it gave them a sense of what the team could accomplish every 2 weeks and match priorities to that. That's a big part of it.
So as far as like the UX, the UI part, so Brianna, like, did you, from the beginning, you had a vision of the user experience and having it be, you know, very efficient to use, and you understood your client and all that, or did you have to do a lot of research, or and how did that work?
So the great thing about having Paula as our CEO is she's, you know, she's in solo private practice. She's a surgeon. Our doctor client was a solo private practice surgeon. So she literally mirrored what our client was going to be. That was what was really great, and why to this day Paula is still, you know, she's, you know, a full-time surgeon, but she's still our CEO, because it's so important to have that domain expertise of someone, you know, the visionary leading this company. So we spent a lot of time looking at Paula's office, how it operated, what the workflow was, right? Because she's just, you know, one surgeon, has a practice, you know, a few admins, right? And we just kind of watched and saw what the workflow looked like. And our goal with UberDoc and its application was, it was not supposed to disrupt a doctor's office, right? You think of all the technologies now a doctor has, you know, their EHRs, right? I don't know if it's more of a U.S. term, but you know, the electronic health record that most physicians use in the U.S. is called Epic, right? And physicians joke that it's made more, you know, doctors retire than ever, because it's just so hard to understand. And that's a real big issue in doctors' offices, is that everyone's trying to shove technology at them, when really, you know, you need to bring the doctor to the technology rather than, you know, shove it at them. So with UberDoc, it was really important to make sure that this was the easiest thing to use, right? We wanted sleek, simple, but sophisticated, but it had to be super easy. So when we originally kind of thought this through, again, we went based off of what would make sense in Paula's office. And then, you know, we wanted to make it as simple as possible. Steve and Kate, you might be able to talk more about the UX and UI kind of, phase. But when we went to Ego directly, I actually ended up becoming, you know, kind of our UX and UI, and that's harder, right? It's hard not to have, you know, a specific team devoted to it, because, you know, I'm in the product every single day, and it's hard to take, you know, unbiased eyes and look at it.
And we did have a designer originally put up some wireframes, and we had Paula a lot going, I don't like that.
Right. Exactly.
So there's a lot of Paula in the app, which is good. It is.
So
and like you said, very sleek, simple.
So basically Paula and Brianna, you were like the main, like, tester. You were like the user experience testers, basically.
We kind of came up, I mean, with the help of Steve and his team, we came up with the original like architecture, you know, what this would look like. But then, you know, the harder part is, you know, after the fact, when you're testing, you know, the product, going through that UX and UI as well. But yeah, we came up, you know, we looked at Paula's, you know, the workflow in her office, and then we came up with the architecture originally, obviously with the help of Steve and Ego.
From the development team perspective, I can say that any new feature that has some new added design, we consider to be the additional one that should be built into the existing app and not break anything. So it's not huge amount of work. It's some adequate amount of work to do that, and that it correlates with what we have already. So based on the requirements we got, we sometimes propose something to get it simplified, to get it a better fit. But in general, yeah, the current flow that we have in the app right now, I think it's what was the initial target. So it's very simple. You know where you are, how you can navigate. So for user, it's I think rather intuitive right now. So.
Yep. And the smoke tests that your team wrote, Kate, were very important. Said to keep things, making sure everything was running smoothly with all new features, nothing broke.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
smoke.
This.
You got to see the smoke tests, Brianna. I walked her through them once.
Yeah, once. We didn't do it again. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, those are usually done before a release and are also taken some time. So a release is not a one-day deal. It's also what we have experienced all together. So when we are done and we want to get these things live, we are excited to get this presented to the users, but we need to follow this process. And smoke tests are also very, very important. So we make sure that with added features, we are not having stuff existing once broken or working in the wrong way. So yeah, that's very important point. Thanks, Steve.
And we had a question from the chat. Maybe we can share with the group. The question was, how many people do you have now on the team at UberDoc?
Yes, I just answered that in the chat, but yeah, we have about 10 people right now. Paula's, our acting, or is our CEO. We have Craig Zevin, who's our COO. Steve is our tech lead. I'm our chief product officer. And then we have 2 developers and marketing and a marketing team. So we're still a lean, mean team. So about 10 people.
And I wanted to circle back to a question. Steve, you said smoke test that you guys are doing. Can you explain for the group what you meant by that? We went over that really quick.
Yeah, the term smoke test comes from old electronics, which was if you plug it in and smoke comes out of it, there's a problem. So it's kind of the same with software. You have a set of tests that run successfully when the product works. And if you add a new feature, you add that to the smoke test, it should still run end to end. If something breaks, you know where it broke. You can go back and look at the test and figure out what you did that went wrong.
Now for the UI and UX part of it, for the presentation layer, was that, you said you had a designer, was that something that was originally started on the Ascendal side, or was that people inside of UberDocs or inside of the Ego team that were working on the presentation layer too to make all that work together?
She was, it was just hired on for the initial design. I'm trying to remember her name, but she just did some wireframe mock-ups to show screens in PowerPoint of walk through what it would look like. It was just to give us all a guideline, common language to talk. But just a short-term contractor type deal.
I'd like to get this question in. As far as the cybersecurity, which is so critical in healthcare technology and this kind of application, did Steve Codd, did your team and plus Ego bring that knowledge and ability to cover that, or did you have to outsource a cybersecurity specialist or something?
No, that was all Ego, and yeah, it was nothing I had a hand in. Kate, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, we followed the standards, the requirements, the protocols on the development side, on the services integration side once we were dealing with this. So yeah, we covered this on our end, the documentation relevant one that you are needed. So yeah, that's the part of the development process, and in healthcare, it's a very important aspect that you should follow developing each feature. So you should think about it when you add any kind of functionality.
And that's why you have the developers do things and not tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And team, we have some excellent questions in the chat. I'd like to put it out to the group. I'm going to read them. Evan says he's not in an environment where he can speak, so he's putting it in the chat. Number one, how are the priorities decided? Priorities for both critical and non-critical issues. are probably different based on the viewpoint of the team or product owner. So he's interested to hear how those conversations went and decisions were made.
All right. As Kate mentioned, the backlog grooming, we would go through a few dozen stories in the backlog, and the team would put story points on them, the weighted values of complexity. And then the priority was all set by a conversation between our team and Brianna's team. They would tell us what they wanted next, what was the most important. And if there were any framework issues that would tell us, well, we have to do this step first, we would put those in. But the call is really the stakeholders, what they want over the next 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks is the sweet spot that we found, that was enough time to get meaningful work done, but not too long that it would affect the needs of the stakeholder. But it was all stakeholder driven. Hope that answers.
Yeah, and I think this might answer a little bit of question 2 as well. But, so a big part of my job, what I do at UberDoc is, taking the feedback we get, from a marketing perspective and communicating that to our technology development, right? Whether that's ego or someone in house, and what we battle with as a startup a lot is, you make assumptions, right? I think we can get more people to click to the next page if we had this or that, right? And that's what's so important about, getting an MVP out first, right? You'd get your bare minimum out first and then you test it, right? And you put it in the hands of the users. And that's why, we wanted this, out as soon as possible, because we just wanted to get it into the hands of patients and doctors so they could give us their feedback, right? We didn't want assumptions. We wanted to actually get the feedback, and that's kind of what went into us,
Breaking up a little.
I think we're losing Brianna a little bit, but I just want to follow up with Evan's questions. He asked, are there times where the team decided against something that would greatly benefit the user or something requested from an overwhelming amount of users based on, the user stories that you put together?
Yep. When the sprint starts, the work that's in the sprint was locked and it just couldn't be changed. It was untouchable. If there was a crash issue that had to be dealt with, all hands on deck type of thing, naturally, yeah. But one of the benefits of the 2-week sprint is that the next item to work on is completely up in the air. So if something came up that a lot of users were asking for something, the UberDoc team could prioritize that as the next thing we work on in the next sprint. The only time that the team might try to influence what was next would be if it was a framework, if there was something we needed to do, if we needed to take a week and update some technology so that the platform would be more stable. But it's all part of the negotiations every 2 weeks of what we should work on next. And the Kate's Ego team would be on those calls, that it was an open forum. We could discuss why we wanted to do something and what needed to be done.
Yeah, sometimes, thanks, Steve. Sometimes there are issues that could be discovered on development team end that could lead to some consequences that we know. So we also put a red flag on those ones and assume those to be critical. Or when we see that the main flow is broken, for example, a user cannot book an appointment or make a payment. So, or we see some limits reached with the services we used. So those could be considered as critical issues and are indicated as critical and are usually red flagged by a team such as ours. So we put the right priority on fixes first and then on the improvements, because with the critical issues and crashes and so-called bugs, users won't be able to use the main flow of the app. So that's usually goes as a #1 priority, and then anything else.
And bugs might be worth mentioning too, is if a bug is a result of work going on in a current sprint, it's tried to be repaired in that sprint. But if a bug is discovered that's outside of the scope being worked on, it's put in the backlog for prioritization. It's not dealt with immediately.
Yeah, and bugs that are prioritized for the sprint are usually going in the top. So team is working on fixes first and then on the new features. So we have this solid quality process and not the distributed attention that sometimes we want to grab everything, to do everything, but it needs to be structured very carefully. Yeah.
So I guess this question is for Kate and Steve, but how would someone that's listening to this that was interested in developing an app, how would someone get started in developing in a Scrum project, in a Scrum methodology to develop their app? Or software platform?
Yeah, it's Scrum. It'd be talking to someone to lay out the stories, to talk through exactly what it is you want to build and why, and the story structure of, as this role, I want this feature so that I can do this, is a great way to think through all the different stuff instead of just a brain dump of a giant requirement. To actually talking through what it is you think you want. And we found, and Kate will probably agree, that the user doesn't always know what they want. That the conversation is important.
Yeah, or the feature, for example, doesn't make sense in terms of what we already have, or has minor priority, and we can tweak it or do it in a bit different way. So that's why there's, constant communication and sharing of the feedback. And as Steve mentioned, there were usually joint calls to define this, because there are always two sides in this process.
And the division of roles is important, having a stakeholder, product owner, scrum master, and team, just so that all the different voices can argue over things.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like we can maybe fit this last question in. What has been your biggest challenge in the development and in your growth? I assume that's UberDoc.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not breaking up again. sorry for that. So the biggest challenge from a non-technical perspective is always budget, right? So in a startup, we started this on what I like to call, the ramen noodle kind of budget. We were just, everything had to be prioritized, right? With limited cash, you have to decide, what's the best thing to spend money on. So budget's always a constraint when it comes to a startup. And Steve, I don't know if you have anything to add from a technical perspective, but that's definitely it from a business perspective.
Okay. I think it's that time that we have to get cut off. So on behalf of UberDoc and Ego Creative Innovation teams, we thank you for joining us late in the evening, Tokyo time. And feel free to contact us. I reposted all our contact information. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.